I never thought a normal day in our house would turn into something that would change everything. You know how sometimes a small secret can quietly grow into something big, something dangerous? That's exactly what happened in my family. And trust me, what I'm about to share is not just a story, it's something that still feels unreal to me. It all started with my sister. She was always the quiet one in the house, the kind of person who kept her feelings to herself. She wasn't the type to argue, to demand attention, or to break rules. In fact, if you asked anyone in our family, they would say she was the most obedient among us. That's why no one ever suspected anything, not even me. Our house runs on one thing: respect for elders, especially my Dada. He's the head of the family and his word is final. No one questions him. His decisions shape everything from what we study to where we go and who we talk to. So you can imagine, in a house like this, secrets don't stay hidden for long, or at least they're not supposed to. But somehow my sister managed to keep one. At first, I noticed small changes. She started spending more time on her phone, smiling at messages, sometimes even stepping outside just to talk. When I asked her, she brushed it off, saying it was just a university group or a class discussion. And honestly, I believed her. I mean, why wouldn't I? She had never given us a reason to doubt her before. But then things started to feel different. She became more careful, more protective of her phone. She would lock her screen quickly if anyone came near. Sometimes, late at night, I could hear her whispering softly, like she didn't want anyone to hear. That's when I realized something wasn't right. One evening, I saw a message pop up on her phone while she was in the kitchen. I didn't mean to look, but the name caught my attention. It wasn't anyone from our family or her usual friends. It was a boy's name. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't say anything at that moment, but from that day I started noticing everything more closely. Slowly the truth began to reveal itself. She was talking to someone, not just casually but deeply. It wasn't just friendship. It was something more. Something serious. She had fallen in love with a university boy. Now, in many places this might not seem like a big deal. But in our house, this was something that could shake everything. Relationships like this, without family approval, were simply not accepted. And if my Dada ever found out, I didn't even want to think about what would happen. Days passed and her secret love continued. I could see it in her eyes, the happiness, the excitement, but also the fear. She knew the risk she was taking. She knew what could happen if anyone found out. But still she didn't stop. Maybe because love makes you brave, or maybe because it makes you forget the consequences. I was stuck in the middle. Part of me wanted to confront her, to warn her, to tell her she was walking on a dangerous path. But another part of me stayed silent. She was my sister. I could see she was happy in a way I had never seen before. And I didn't have the heart to take that away from her. Everything seemed under control, until that one day. It was a normal afternoon. My Dada was sitting in the living room as usual, watching everything around him with those sharp eyes that missed nothing. My sister was in her room, probably talking to him again. And I was just there, trying to ignore the growing tension I felt inside. Then suddenly something changed. I don't know how. I don't know what exactly happened. But my Dada called her name in a way I had never heard before. It wasn't normal. It wasn't calm. It was serious, almost storm-like. My heart started racing. My sister walked out of her room slowly, her face pale. I could tell she knew something was wrong. And in that moment I realized, maybe the secret wasn't a secret anymore. My Dada was holding something in his hand. I couldn't see it clearly, but whatever it was, it had already changed the atmosphere in the house. The silence became heavy. No one dared to speak. He looked at her, not with anger at first, but with disappointment. And somehow that felt even worse. I stood there, frozen, not knowing what to do. Should I step in? Should I stay quiet? Was this the moment everything would fall apart? My sister tried to say something, but her voice shook. And before she could explain anything, my Dada spoke, and what he said next made my heart drop. That was the moment I realized, this wasn't just about a secret anymore. This was about a choice, a relationship, and a decision that could break everything. And what happened next? I still can't forget. My Dada's voice was calm, but there was something in it that made everyone uneasy. He didn't shout. He didn't lose control. And somehow that made it even more serious. He slowly raised his hand and showed what he was holding. It was my sister's phone. I felt a chill run through my body. I didn't know how he got it or how long he had been looking at it, but one thing was clear. He had seen something. Something he wasn't supposed to see. My sister stood there, completely still. Her eyes were fixed on the phone, and I could see the fear slowly taking over her face. This was the moment she had been trying to avoid all this time. "Who is he?" my Dada asked. Just 3 words. but they carried so much weight that it felt like the whole house stopped breathing. No one said anything. Even I couldn't move. I wanted to help her, to say something, anything, but I didn't know what. My sister opened her mouth, but no words came out. It was like she was frozen between truth and fear. My Dada didn't repeat the question. He just kept looking at her, waiting. Finally she spoke, but her voice was barely audible. "He's from my university." That was it. The truth was out. But instead of shouting, my Dada leaned back slightly as if he was trying to understand more. "How long?" he asked. My sister hesitated again. I could see tears forming in her eyes now. "Some months," she said softly. The silence that followed felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't just about a secret anymore. It was about trust, respect, and everything our family believed in. I could feel the tension building in the room. My mind kept racing. How did this even happen? Who was this boy? Did anyone else know? And most importantly, what was going to happen now? My Dada finally looked down at the phone again. He scrolled through something, then stopped. His expression changed slightly, but it was hard to read. It wasn't pure anger. It was something deeper, something like disappointment mixed with concern. "Does he know about this family?" he asked. My sister nodded slowly. "Yes, he knows." That answer didn't seem to make things better. "And still you continued?" my Dada said, this time a little more firm. My sister wiped her tears quickly, trying to stay strong. "It wasn't like that," she said. "We didn't plan anything wrong. We started talking and—" Before she could finish, my Dada raised his hand slightly. Not to stop her harshly, but enough to make her pause. "This is not how things are done," he said. His voice was still controlled, but now there was a clear line being drawn. "You know the values of this house." I could see my sister struggling inside. She wasn't arguing, but she also wasn't fully giving up. It was like she was caught between her feelings and her fear of losing everything. And that's when I realized something I hadn't thought about before. This wasn't just a one-sided story. There was another person involved, that university boy. The one who had somehow become such an important part of my sister's life. The one my Dada now knew about. But who was he really? That question stayed in my mind as the situation continued to unfold. My Dada placed the phone on the table in front of him. "What is his name?" he asked. My sister looked down for a moment, then quietly said his name. It was the first time I had heard it clearly. It felt strange, like hearing the name of someone who had been hidden for so long. "Where is he from?" my Dada continued. She answered again, giving small details. Each answer felt like it was adding more weight to the situation. I noticed something during this. My Dada wasn't reacting immediately. He was listening carefully, asking questions one by one, almost like he was trying to understand the full picture before making any decision. But that didn't make it easier. In fact, it made it more intense, because no one knew what he was thinking. And that uncertainty was the scariest part. After a few moments, my Dada leaned forward slightly and said something that caught all of us off guard. "Does he respect you?" he asked. The question felt unexpected. Even my sister looked surprised. She nodded quickly. "Yes, he does." "And does he respect this family?" my Dada added. This time, my sister didn't answer immediately. She hesitated, and that small pause didn't go unnoticed. I think so," she said. My Dada looked at her closely, as if trying to read the truth behind her words. Then he took a deep breath and sat back again. The room was completely silent. I could feel my own heartbeat in my ears. Part of me thought maybe things wouldn't explode the way I had imagined. Maybe there was still a chance for things to be handled calmly. But another part of me knew this was just the beginning. Because in our family, decisions like this were never simple. They involved more than just feelings. They involved honor, trust, and the expectations of everyone connected to us. My sister stood there waiting. I could see she wanted to explain more, to defend her relationship, to make my Dada understand. But she didn't know how far she could go without making things worse. And then, just when it felt like the moment couldn't get any more tense, my Dada said something that changed everything again. "Bring him," he said. At first I thought I heard it wrong. My sister looked up, confused. "What?" "Bring him," my Dada repeated, this time more clearly. "I want to see who this boy is." The air in the room shifted instantly. This was not what anyone expected. Not me, not my sister, maybe not even my Dada himself. My sister's face showed a mix of fear and shock. This was a completely new turn. Meeting him meant everything would become real. There would be no more hiding, no more secret calls, no more quiet messages. It would all come out in the open. And once that happened, there would be no going back. I looked at my sister, trying to understand what she was thinking. Was this a chance? Or was this a test she couldn't pass? Because deep down I had a feeling. This meeting wasn't going to be simple. And whatever happened next could either save her relationship or break it completely. The days that followed felt like walking on thin ice. My sister barely spoke, and whenever she did, it was in whispers that barely carried across the room. I could see the anxiety written all over her face, the constant worry about how my Dada would react when the university boy arrived. And me. I didn't know whether to feel protective, nervous, or completely helpless. The house that once felt familiar now seemed like a stage where every small action could set off an unexpected reaction. She tried to continue her routine, studying, helping around the house, but every time the phone buzzed, her hands trembled. I could tell she wanted to reply, to send a message back to him, but she held herself back. She was scared. And I understood that fear because I had seen how my Dada could react when someone crossed the rules of the house. The quiet control he had always maintained now felt like a shadow hovering over every move we made. Meanwhile, I couldn't stop thinking about the boy. Who was he really? Was he serious about her? Did he understand the risks he was taking by being with her? I knew my sister's words about him being respectful, but respect alone wasn't enough in our situation. She was in love, yes, but love didn't guarantee that my Dada would approve. I started imagining him coming into our home, the tension that would fill the air, the questions he would have to answer. Would he be brave enough to face my Dada, or would he run away? My sister, of course, had her own worries. Every night she would stay up, staring at her phone, rehearsing what she would say, what he should say, how everything should unfold. But no matter how many times she practiced, the thought of my Dada looking at him directly, judging him, made her stomach twist into knots. I tried to offer comfort, but she just shook her head. "You don't understand," she would say. "This isn't just about me. It's bigger than that." And she was right. It wasn't just her love on the line, it was the entire family's expectations, our reputation, everything my Dada had built. I started noticing little signs that my Dada was already preparing. He began observing my sister more closely than usual, asking indirect questions about her university life, her friends, and her activities. It was subtle, but the pressure was there. She would answer carefully, measuring every word, hoping to avoid giving him any reason to act rashly. But the truth has a way of finding its own path, no matter how carefully you hide it. Then there was the complication of the university boy himself. My sister's phone messages, which I had reluctantly glanced at once, hinted that he didn't fully understand the seriousness of the situation. He talked about meeting her casually, joking about small dates and late-night calls, but he seemed unaware of the storm he would walk into. I feared that if he came without understanding the gravity of our family's rules, he might do something foolish, and then there would be no way to control the consequences. One evening, I overheard a conversation between my sister and him. They spoke quietly, but I could catch fragments. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I don't want to cause trouble," she replied. And then, "I have to be honest with him. I can't hide anymore." Her voice trembled, and I realized she was preparing herself for the confrontation that would decide everything. Meanwhile, the house felt tighter, smaller, heavier. Every noise seemed amplified, the creak of the door, the hum of the refrigerator, even our footsteps on the stairs. I could sense that the tension wasn't just psychological, it was physical. We were all holding our breath, waiting for something to happen, waiting for the meeting that could either destroy or change everything. I tried to think about it from my Dada's perspective too. He had always been fair in his way, but also unyielding when it came to principles. He wasn't a man to act impulsively, but once a decision was made, there was no turning back. Would he see the boy as a threat? Or would he try to understand the situation? I didn't know, and the uncertainty made everything feel heavier. Then there was the tension between my sister and me. I wanted to support her, but at the same time I feared the consequences. I caught myself watching her phone at times, hoping to see a clue about what he would say, whether he would keep his promises, whether he would be brave enough to face my Dada. It felt wrong spying like this, but I couldn't stop myself. This wasn't just a story about love anymore, it was about survival, loyalty, and choices that could affect the entire family. Even our friends noticed the change. My sister's friends at university would call and ask why she was distant or distracted. She would smile, shrug, and give vague answers. But behind that smile there was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of losing love, and fear of my Dada's reaction. Every time she laughed or seemed happy, I could sense her trying to convince herself that everything would turn out okay, even when I knew she wasn't sure. As the day of the meeting drew closer, the suspense became almost unbearable. We couldn't plan anything openly, Every discussion had to be whispered, every glance careful. My sister would pace in her room, her mind racing, while I tried to remain calm on the outside even though my chest felt tight with anxiety. Every moment felt like walking toward a storm that we couldn't see yet, but we could already hear the thunder. And the boy, well, he was still a mystery. We knew little about him beyond the phone conversations. We didn't know how he would behave under pressure, how he would answer questions, how he would react to my Dada's authority. One wrong move, and the relationship could collapse before it even had a chance to survive. The tension wasn't just in the house, it was inside all of us. Every conversation, every look, every decision carried weight. Even small things like what she wore or how she greeted him suddenly seemed like part of a test. And the scariest part? None of us knew how this story would end. We could only wait. And as the evening sun cast long shadows across our living room, I realized that nothing would ever feel normal again. The calm before the storm was over. The meeting was coming. And when it happened, everything we thought we knew about love, family, and loyalty would be tested like never before. The questions kept spinning in my mind. Would my Dada accept him? Would my sister be able to defend her feelings? And most importantly, was their love strong enough to survive the storm that was about to hit? The answer, no one knew yet. The day had finally arrived. I could feel it in the way the morning sunlight hit the floor and how even the birds outside seemed quieter than usual. My sister didn't say much and I didn't either. Every step felt heavier than the last, like we were walking slowly toward a moment that would change everything. I kept glancing at her, seeing the mix of fear and determination in her eyes. She was trying to be brave, but I could see the worry hiding just below the surface. The house felt completely different that morning. Every corner seemed sharper, every sound louder. My Dada was in the living room, sitting upright in his chair like a statue, his eyes fixed on the front door. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he clasped his hands together, the way his eyes scanned every little movement. He didn't say a word, but we all knew exactly what he was thinking. My sister's phone buzzed. She froze for a moment before taking a deep breath and picking it up. I could see her fingers shaking slightly as she typed a message. I didn't need to read it to know what it said. It was time. Time for him to come. Time for the confrontation. I tried to focus on anything else, anything normal, but it was impossible. Every creak of the door, every rustle of the curtains, every distant sound outside felt like a warning. I could see my sister's face pale even further, and I felt a knot in my stomach tighten. This was the moment we had been waiting for, the moment that would either tear everything apart or somehow make sense of the chaos. The doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the house, and I swear I could hear my own heartbeat in that moment. My sister froze, then whispered, "He's here." My Dada didn't move. He didn't rush. He didn't show a hint of emotion. But the way he tilted his head slightly, watching the door, made it clear that he was ready. Ready to judge. Ready to decide. I walked toward the door with my sister, trying to steady my own nerves while silently hoping that the boy would be strong enough to face my Dada. The door opened and there he stood. I caught my first real glimpse of him in our house. He looked nervous, but there was also something confident in the way he held himself. I could see my sister's eyes light up slightly, a mix of relief and fear as she looked at him. He stepped inside slowly. Every step he took felt like it carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions. He looked around, clearly aware of the tension in the air, and I could see him taking a deep breath as he finally turned his gaze toward my Dada. For a moment no one spoke. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy, like the calm before a storm. My Dada studied him carefully, his eyes sharp, piercing. I could feel the intensity in the room growing with every passing second. Finally my Dada spoke and the words cut through the air like a knife. "So this is him?" The boy nodded, trying to appear composed, but I could see the tension in his jaw. My sister took a small step forward as if to support him silently, but my Dada didn't flinch. He simply studied them both, measuring, judging, waiting. "What do you want?" my Dada asked, his voice steady but filled with authority. The question wasn't just about their relationship. It carried the weight of all the rules, all the expectations, all the family values that had been passed down for generations. The boy swallowed and tried to speak. "Sir, I care about your daughter. I respect your family, and I only want to be honest with you." My Dada's gaze didn't soften. It never did. He simply leaned back slightly, folding his hands. "And yet you chose to continue secretly. You knew this house does not allow such things without approval. Why?" The question hung in the air. I could feel my sister holding her breath, waiting for him to answer, knowing that every word would either help or destroy everything. He looked at her briefly, then back at my Dada. Because I couldn't ignore my feelings. I care about her deeply and I wanted her to know that I'm serious. That's why I didn't hide anything from her, even if I didn't know how to tell you at first. I could see my Dada's eyes narrow slightly, the way they always did when he was assessing someone. He didn't move, he didn't speak, but I could feel the judgment radiating from him. My sister stepped a little closer to him, her hand brushing against his arm lightly, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. His words were her shield for now. The silence returned. This time it felt heavier than before. My Dada's face was unreadable, but I could see the subtle signs. The slight shift in his body, the tightness in his jaw, the way his eyes flicked between them. Every second stretched endlessly. Then my Dada finally spoke again, his voice low and deliberate. "You understand what this means, don't you?" The boy nodded. "Yes, sir. I do." My sister's eyes widened. She whispered almost to herself, "This is it." I felt my chest tighten. The tension had reached a point where it was almost unbearable. Every heartbeat felt loud, every breath felt heavy, and every small movement seemed magnified. The questions loomed over us all. Would my Dada finally give them a chance? Would he reject the boy outright? Could their relationship survive the authority and expectations that now pressed down on them? I looked at my sister. She was pale but standing tall, her hands clenched slightly, waiting for the storm to pass or hit. And I looked at the boy. He was trying to remain calm, but I could see the fear, the pressure, the realization that one wrong word could change everything. And I realized then, as the seconds stretched into what felt like an eternity, that the next moment, whatever it was, would decide the future of all of us. Because in that room, in that silence, the final test was about to begin. And no one knew what would come next. Just when it seemed like the tension couldn't get any higher, the unexpected happened. The doorbell rang again. My heart stopped for a second and my sister froze mid-step. The boy glanced at the door nervously, but my Dada didn't move. He simply gestured for her to open it, silently telling her to face whatever was outside. My sister hesitated, her hands trembling, before walking to the door. She opened it slowly and I saw someone standing there, someone I wasn't expecting. It was her classmate from university, someone we knew only in passing. But the way he looked at my sister made it clear he wasn't just there to visit politely. What are you doing here?" my Dada asked, his voice steady but carrying an edge I hadn't heard before. The classmate stepped forward confidently, ignoring the formalities. "Sir, I need to speak with your daughter," he said, his tone serious. "It's important." My sister looked back at the boy standing inside the house. His face went pale and I could see the tension spike instantly. She opened her mouth to explain, but my Dada held up a hand, cutting her off. "I will decide who speaks in this house," he said, his voice carrying the authority that no one dared question. The classmate ignored him and took a step closer. "I know about your daughter's relationship," he said, his eyes darting between my sister and the university boy. "And I think you should know, there's more going on than you realize." My sister's face went white. She stepped back slightly, confused and terrified. What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely audible. The classmate hesitated, then continued. "He's not the only one. There's been talk at university, people know. And some of them are not happy." I felt my stomach drop. Suddenly, the safe, controlled tension that had been in the room was replaced by something unpredictable. This wasn't just about my sister and the boy anymore. Now there were outside pressures, rumors, and judgment creeping in from people we didn't even know. The university boy stepped forward, his face tense. "What are you saying?" he demanded. "Are you trying to scare her?" The classmate shook his head. "No. I'm warning you. People are watching, and if your relationship continues, things could get messy. Really messy. Your family might not even be the only ones involved." My Dada leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. "Explain." The classmate swallowed. "There are people at the university, people who know your daughter has been seeing someone secretly. They don't approve and some have been spreading rumors. If this continues, it could affect her reputation, her studies, even her safety." My sister's hands flew to her face. She looked at the boy, then back at my Dada, panic rising in her eyes. I could feel my own pulse hammering in my ears. This twist, this new information, was like a storm suddenly hitting a calm sea. The university boy tried to step closer to her, but my Dada held up a hand, stopping him. "So now the issue is not just your relationship but the judgment of others?" he asked, his voice cold and deliberate. The classmate nodded. "Yes, and it's serious. You need to understand the consequences before it's too late." My sister looked down at her feet, trembling. I didn't know it would be like this," she whispered. The tension in the room skyrocketed. My Dada's eyes were fixed on both of them, but I could see that his mind was racing. He wasn't just deciding about the relationship anymore, he was now calculating the impact of outside forces on our family, on our home, on everything he had tried to protect. The university boy tried to speak again, but the classmate interrupted him. You can't just think this is simple love. People are watching, talking, and if you make the wrong move, everything could collapse. My sister's face was pale, and I could see tears forming again. She looked at me, silently asking for help, but I had none to give. I didn't know what to say. The rules of the house, the warnings of my Dada, the unexpected threat from outside, everything was closing in. Then my Dada's voice cut through, low and controlled, but carrying an undeniable power. So it's not just you two now. Others are involved. And their actions could affect our family? Both boys nodded. The tension hung so thick that I could feel it pressing down on all of us. My sister's breathing was uneven, and I could see her struggling to remain composed. And just when I thought the tension had reached its peak, my Dada added something that made my heart stop. Then you must all understand, any decision here affects everyone. And I will not allow anyone to make mistakes that destroy this house. The words were calm, but the weight behind them was crushing. Everyone froze. No one moved. Even the air in the room seemed heavy, as if holding its breath in anticipation. I could feel it in my bones, whatever happened next would change everything. Because now it wasn't just about secret love. It was about trust, judgment, family honor, and unexpected outsiders threatening to expose everything. And the storm was just beginning. The room was silent, heavy with tension. I could feel my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. My Dada sat back in his chair, his eyes scanning my sister and the two boys before him. The silence seemed endless, every second stretching like hours until finally he spoke. Enough, he said, his voice low but commanding. We need the truth. All of it. My sister took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly, but she stood taller than I expected. Dada. I love him, she said, pointing to the university boy. I didn't plan it, I didn't mean to hide it, but I couldn't stop how I felt. And I know I should have told you sooner. The boy stepped forward. Sir, I care for your daughter. I respect her and your family, and I never wanted to cause problems. I'm serious about our relationship and I want to be honest. My Dada's eyes softened for just a second, but his voice remained steady. And yet, secrecy led to rumors, misunderstandings, and now complications from others. Do you understand the risk you've brought into this house? Yes, sir, my sister replied firmly. And I accept it. I'm ready to face the consequences. The room held its breath. I could see my Dada considering, his gaze shifting between the three of them. Then he leaned forward and said something that shocked everyone. If you truly care for her and she for you, then I will give you one chance. But understand this, the relationship will not be tolerated in secret, and every action from here on must honor this family. Do you agree? Both boys nodded immediately. My sister's face lit up with relief, and even I felt a small wave of hope. This was the moment we had all been waiting for, a resolution, a path forward. But my Dada wasn't finished. He turned to the university boy and added, there is one condition. You must show me that your intentions are genuine. You will spend time with this family, understand our values, our responsibilities, and prove that you are worthy of her trust and ours. The boy swallowed, nodded, and agreed. It was clear he understood the seriousness of the challenge. My sister exhaled, relief washing over her. It felt like the tension had lifted slightly, the storm beginning to calm. Then my Dada stood, and the room went silent again. And as for the outside complications, he paused, his eyes scanning the classmate who had appeared unexpectedly earlier. You will have no role in this. You brought warnings, yes, but this house will not tolerate interference that threatens our family's honor. The classmate bowed slightly, understanding he had overstepped, and backed out of the room quietly. I felt my own shoulders relax for the first time in days. My sister moved closer to me, gripping my arm. I whispered, it's over, for now. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. But then, just as the sense of relief settled in, my Dada added something that sent a chill through the room. There is one more thing. He looked directly at my sister. I know your secret wasn't just about him. There's something else you've been hiding from me. My sister froze. My heart raced. I had no idea what he meant. Had he somehow found out about something else? She shook her head, stammering. And no, Dada, there's nothing else. My Dada's eyes didn't waver. Do not lie to me. Secrets have a way of revealing themselves, and I will not be fooled. For a moment the air was thick with fear. The room went completely still, every heartbeat amplified. Then slowly she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "There is one more thing." My Dada leaned in closer, and the boy looked confused, unsure of what was coming. I braced myself for a revelation I hadn't anticipated. I'm not sure if I'm ready to say it all yet," she admitted. "But I need time. You deserve to know eventually." But her words trailed off. The tension returned instantly. Even after resolving the main conflict, the sense of mystery, the secret she had yet to reveal, made the room feel charged again. My Dada's face was unreadable, but I could sense that this revelation, whatever it was, would change everything once more. The university boy looked at her, concerned. "What is it?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I can't say yet. Not today. But it's something important. Something that could affect all of us." The room was silent again, but now it wasn't just suspense. It was uncertainty, a lingering tension that refused to dissipate. My Dada stood, nodded once and said, "Then you will have time, but remember, honesty is the only way forward. Secrets can no longer guide your decisions. Understand?" She nodded, trembling slightly but determined. The boy took her hand, squeezing it gently, signaling that they would face whatever came next together. I exhaled slowly, feeling the relief wash over me, but at the same time, the lingering shadow of her hidden secret kept my heart racing. And just as I thought the storm had passed, the front door creaked open again. We all turned instinctively. My Dada's eyes narrowed. My sister froze. The university boy stepped in front of her protectively. And there, standing in the doorway, was someone we never expected. Someone from the university whose involvement no one had anticipated, carrying a letter that simply read, "You think you've seen the truth, but you've only begun." The room went completely silent. And in that instant I realized, the story wasn't over. Not even close. The letter lay on the floor between us, and for a moment, everything froze. My Dada's sharp eyes studied it carefully, then looked up at my sister and the university boy. My sister's hands shook slightly and I could feel the tension in the room spike again, but this time it was different. It wasn't just fear, it was curiosity, a sense that something important was about to unfold. My Dada picked up the letter and read it aloud slowly. "You think you've seen the truth, but you've only begun." His voice was calm, but every word carried weight. The university boy stepped closer to my sister, holding her hand as if to reassure her. My sister looked at me with wide eyes, clearly unsure of what this meant. After a long pause, my Dada set the letter down. "It seems," he said, his tone measured, "that this situation is not just about choices within this house. There are external forces, rumors, misunderstandings, and perhaps even jealousy. But one thing remains clear: honesty, courage, and respect must guide your actions." My sister nodded slowly. The tension in her shoulders relaxed a little, though I could see her mind still racing. The university boy gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "We'll face it together," he said quietly. "Nothing else matters if we're honest and sincere." My Dada finally exhaled and looked at both of them, his expression softening slightly. "Very well. I will allow your relationship to continue, but with conditions. Secrecy is no longer acceptable. Every action must honor this family, and you will both demonstrate commitment, respect, and responsibility. If either of you fails in this, the consequences will be serious." Both of them nodded earnestly. My sister's eyes shone with relief and gratitude, and I felt a wave of hope washing through the room. It wasn't perfect and it wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in days, I sensed that a path forward had been carved. The classmate who had arrived earlier quietly slipped out of the house, leaving us to process everything that had happened. I could see that his warnings, though frightening, had helped all of us understand the seriousness of the situation. They weren't meant to harm my sister, but they reminded us that love alone isn't enough. Responsibility, communication, and trust are equally important. Over the next few days, my sister and the university boy worked to prove their sincerity. They helped with family chores, participated in family gatherings, and spent time learning more about our values and responsibilities. My Dada observed quietly, his approval slow but steady. Every action, every word, and every gesture was now weighed carefully, not just for appearances, but for the trust that had been restored. I could see my sister change as well. She became more confident, more aware of the balance between love and duty. The university boy showed patience, understanding, and respect, earning not only my Dada's cautious approval but also the quiet admiration of our entire family. Slowly, the tension that had gripped the house began to lift. One evening my Dada called us all together. He sat back in his chair and looked at my sister and the boy. "I have seen your efforts," he said. "I have observed your intentions and your actions. It is clear that your relationship is genuine and that you are willing to honor our family. Therefore I grant my approval, for now." My sister's face lit up with joy. The boy breathed a sigh of relief and I couldn't help but smile as well. The storm had passed, and although there were still challenges ahead, a foundation of trust and honesty had been established. But the final surprise came quietly. My Dada held up the letter that had arrived just before all of this began. "This letter," he said, "was meant to test your courage and your commitment. Life will always throw unexpected challenges, and those who face them with integrity and honesty will succeed. Remember this lesson. Not all threats are obvious and not all truths are revealed at once." We all nodded. My sister carefully folded the letter and placed it in her drawer. The warning it carried would always be a reminder, but it would no longer control our actions or our fear. As the days turned into weeks, life slowly returned to a rhythm that felt normal again. My sister continued her studies, now with the confidence that her love was accepted and her family's values respected. The university boy visited often, showing patience and care, integrating himself into our household in small but meaningful ways. I realized something important during this time. Secrets may create tension, but honesty and respect can heal even the deepest rifts. Family isn't just about authority, it's about guidance, understanding, and the willingness to give people a chance to prove themselves. Looking back, the entire experience taught all of us a valuable lesson. Love is powerful, but it isn't enough on its own. Responsibility, honesty, and trust are what make it sustainable. And sometimes the most unexpected twists, like the arrival of that letter, aren't obstacles but opportunities to grow stronger, wiser, and more united. The house no longer felt heavy with tension. Instead, it carried a quiet warmth. My sister and her love had passed their first real test, and although challenges would come in the future, the foundation of trust and understanding that had been built during this crisis would guide them. As I watched them laughing quietly one evening, planning small things together, I realized that life isn't about avoiding conflicts or hiding secrets. It's about facing them, learning from them, and moving forward with courage. And with that thought, I knew that our family, though tested, had become stronger than ever. Even the mysterious letter, once a symbol of fear and suspense, now seemed like a reminder that challenges can arrive unexpectedly, but with honesty and patience we can face them. And as the sun set over our home, I felt a sense of closure, not just for my sister's secret love, but for the lessons we all had learned about trust, resilience, and the power of truth. The story had reached its end, but the memories, the lessons, and the growth would remain with us forever. Love had triumphed, but not without teaching us the importance of honesty, responsibility, and the courage to face every unexpected twist life throws our way.